Motronics.
The 2024 Buick Envista, which I am in right now, as well as the 2024 Buick Encore GX. Those are all of those right there. They feature an all-new infotainment system, and you see it right here. This infotainment system is comprised of two distinct and really separate screens, but they do work together, and I'm going to show you that in a second. The first screen is this 8-inch unit right here. This is the driver information center, otherwise known as the digital gauge cluster. And the second screen is this 11-inch unit right here that is used for the infotainment functions. Let's start with this driver information cluster, or the gauge cluster right here. So unlike prior models, the DIC here is not adjustable. It's not controlled, rather, via these buttons over here. Instead, if you want to control it, you have to do so via this screen right here. So currently, as you can see, I have the tire pressure gauge here, which shows this vehicle's tire pressure at all four corners. There's also the fuel gauge on this side and the engine temperature gauge on this side. You have the vehicle odometer here. This particular model has 502 miles on the clock. You also have the gear right here. That's the gear that this vehicle is in, whether it's drive, neutral, reverse, or park. And then there is the fuel range right here, along with the indicator right there for the compass, along with the speed right there, and cruise control icon, and a few other indicators there at the top. So this tire pressure gauge, if I want this gauge, I don't just use one of these wheels. In fact, this doesn't really do anything anymore, it seems. And I also don't use this side of the steering wheel controls, which controls the cruise control. Instead, what I have to do is I'm just going to go to this screen. This is now on the home screen right here. And from there, I go to this item right there. This will give me three options: maintenance, gauges, and trip. So if I go to gauges, for instance, you'll see I have the battery voltage, I have the coolant temperature, and those are the two gauges that are available to me here. If I go to maintenance, I can see tire pressure and oil life. So for instance, if I want the oil life in here, what I would do is I would click it like so, that arrow, and I can either reset it or I can say show in cluster. If I say show in cluster, it will replace that tire pressure gauge with the oil life gauge here. The same thing goes for the trip meter. So for instance, if I want to show the trip information, this is trip 1. If I want to show the fuel economy gauge, or anything else for that matter, I could just go trip information. I can go reset trip 1, reset trip 2, or I can show it in cluster. I will say show in cluster, and there it is. Now I have trip 1 as well as trip 2 side by side in the cluster. So that's how you control what appears in the driver information center now. It is no longer controlled via these buttons whatsoever. From there, if I switch back to the center infotainment screen, I can go home, and here you see the various options. So I have Android Auto, I have CarPlay. Obviously, there are no phones connected to this right now. I have the climate control feature right here, so I could select the temperature. I could also do it on the control panel over here, so I could go up or down, and it will reflect that over here. I can also control the fan speed here. I can do it via the screen as well, and I can control the direction of the air, and I can actually select all three because this is now a digital system. So I could go here, I could go to the legs, and I can go defog. All right, and so from there, if I go home, I can also go to settings. There's a whole bunch of settings in here that I could scroll through. This is now all touch screens, so I don't have a wheel or any kind of dial to navigate through these options here. I can also go to vehicle and look at the vehicle settings. So I basically have system settings, vehicle settings, and I have apps right there. Back to home, I have the Wi-Fi hotspot that I can connect to, and it will give me the SSID name, so the name of the network, the password of the network, and whether or not it is sharing data. And so that's essentially the home screen. There is no built-in navigation system in this vehicle either. It's essentially bring your own navigation either via Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. We went through the gauges over here, already did that. Then there is this TC button. TC is traction control. And so here you have three options. You can go traction control off, traction control and electronic stability control off, or traction control and electronic stability control off. This one will be quite fun, I imagine. And if you do that, then of course you have the relevant icons appear on the DIC. And then from there you have the phone menu item. Currently we have no phone connected, but if there were a phone connected, it would display Apple CarPlay, it would display Android Auto, that whole interface right here within the screen. And then finally, music. So here I have the ability to go through and select what I want to listen to. Right now it's looking for an external device like a smartphone from which to play music. But I can also go and I can basically select my source. I can go AM, FM, Sirius XM, or I can add a device. So these are my sources. So let's hit FM real quick. I'm gonna mute it. This is the radio right there. So you have that. Here I can go and do the actual entering of the station. So if I want to go to, 95.9, I could either enter it like so, or it gives me the available recommendations in my area. So I could just hit that. It will display the name of the station and whatever data that it is sharing as well. From here, I can go back and forth, and basically have my old school tuning dial. But obviously this is not all that old school anymore because now I'm using these left and right arrows. And then there is a settings wheel, basically a configuration wheel, where I can control the sound, manage the favorites, and control a few other settings as well. All 2024 Buick Envistas feature a 6-speaker audio system. So there is the first speaker there, second speaker there, and then a third in the rear door right there. And you have that on both sides of the vehicle, hence a 6-speaker sound system. And it does sound very good. It is not a Bose system, it's an unbranded system, and a Bose system is actually not available even as an option. But the good news is that the standard sound system here sounds pretty good, actually. So I have had the opportunity to play with the system, and it sounds very good, with good bass, good treble, good mids, and also no distortion from vibration or things like that. So that's the good news when it comes to the stock and really the only audio system that is available in the 2024 Buick Envista. A few other things here on the infotainment system as a whole. You do have the 4G LTE indicator, so that's the signal strength, ambient temperature outside. You have the clock right here, and then you have the favorites down here, which you can swipe. This action right here is much more responsive and much more fluid than it was in prior generations of GM's infotainment systems. That's the good news. You could also go back and forth this way as well, and you can hold to set, and I can do so right now. So basically I hold to set it, and it will make whatever station I have now one of the favorites. Gone is the option where you can swipe up on the favorites slider and actually bring up more favorites. That is now gone. The only demerit I see here is that, well, there are two. First is that this screen, if you're interacting with it via touch, and that's really the only way to interact with it now, there is no other button anywhere here in the console, here in the center stack, anywhere else. The only way to interact with this system is via touch. This system gets warm. Let me go back and actually say that this system actually gets very hot. This screen, if I keep my finger on it here, this does not feel all that good. So that's the first demerit. And then the second one that I personally don't like is the fact that I have to go through this menu to actually change or select the gauges in the DIC. That is not something that I'm really looking forward to doing myself. I've really grown accustomed to being able to go through the menu items here on the steering wheel and essentially control it that way. That is no longer the case. So this might be just a matter of me getting accustomed to this way, to this new way of doing things. But personally, I still think I would prefer to be able to navigate the gauges and whatever other options within the DIC via these buttons here. And so there you have it, a tour of the infotainment system in the 2024 Buick Envista. And like I said earlier, this is the same system that is also used in the 2024 Buick Encore GX, which was fully refreshed for the 2024 model year. For GMAuthority.com and the Metrolix Network, I'm Alex Luft. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Motrolix.